Welcome, everybody. Good to have you here with us tonight. Glad you could join us, and thanks for your interest in water conservation. So tonight, we're going to be together here for about an hour. So we've got about 45 minutes of content, and then hopefully we'll have about 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So I'm going to first introduce us to the bigger picture of why does water conservation matter, and then we'll be hearing the top 10 ways to save water in your home. So you'll want to stick around. We're counting it down, so I think you'll want to stay till the end so you can hear what that number one tip is, as well as a chance to possibly win a rain barrel. If you live in the region of Waterloo and you attend the webinar, we are going to give away 2 rain barrels as prizes. So I'll tell you more about that at the end of the webinar. So you'll be hearing from 2 of us tonight. So I'm Scott. I'm a water program coordinator for the region of Waterloo. I work on the water efficiency team. So I help people understand how to save water and the benefits of water conservation. And Andrew Sheedle, who you'll be hearing from soon, is a residential water advisor with Reep Green Solutions. He has worked with about 100 different homeowners locally to help them reduce their water use. And so Reep Green Solutions, if you're not familiar with them, they are an environmental organization here in the region that have a lot of different programs to help people live sustainably. They have tree planting programs. They help people build rain gardens on their properties. They have experts on their staff who can do energy audits for your home, and they can also review your home water use, which is something that we'll be talking about more today. And then in terms of where I'm coming from, the region, we've been promoting water efficiency and water conservation since 1974. And not me personally, but the region has been a priority for the region for that long. We have programs right now for homeowners, for businesses, for multi-unit properties like apartment buildings, with funding and incentives to promote water conservation. And we have a lot of other things we do in the community. You might know the summer conservation bylaw. You might know our rain barrel sale. You might have attended a naturescaping seminar. There's all sorts of things like that we do. Okay, so before we get into the really practical hands-on stuff that Andrew's going to talk about, I wanted to just speak about why even care about water conservation. Why are we holding this webinar? And to answer that question, you have to understand where our water comes from here in the region of Waterloo. And we're sort of unique here in Southern Ontario, our community, because we are a pretty big city, or a group of cities and townships that don't get our water primarily from a Great Lake. So most of our water comes from underground aquifers, also called groundwater. That's about 80% of the water that we use here in the community. And the rest, the other 20%, comes from the Grand River. So that is pretty unique. And it makes using that water even more important for us as the region grows. And we are expected to grow quite a bit in the next few decades. We sort of have an upper cap, a bit of a limit on how much water we could draw at any one time from that groundwater. It's not quite as limitless seeming as some of those communities that can tap into the Great Lakes. Now, there's also benefits to water conservation for homeowners like you. There's sort of a financial benefit from saving water, and nobody likes to be wasteful. No one wants to be using something that they don't need to be using, especially something as precious as water. So yeah, water bills are a place where some people have an opportunity to save some money. especially if you've got some areas of your house that could use some updating. We Just to give you an example, a family of 3 with average water use would be saving about $70 a month compared to a family of 3 with above average water use, like roughly double what the average folks are using. So $70 a month over a year, that certainly adds up. And of course, that water rates change year over year. So any dollar figures you hear, that's just a snapshot of where things are today. But water rates, as you probably know, are going up. They keep going up as we need to update our infrastructure. So it's another good reason to put some thought into water efficiency. In terms of the bigger community, water efficiency and water conservation matters because it's a lot cheaper for us to continue getting our water from our current sources, rather than building new wells, new water treatment plants, new wastewater treatment plants. These are all very expensive technologies, and that's taxpayer money. And the more water that our community needs, the more of those facilities we need. There's also an energy cost. So pumping and treating water takes electricity. There's a carbon emissions element to that. Yeah, reducing water use has financial benefits in a number of different ways for our community. And looking really long term, you'll see there, avoid expensive new water pipeline. That's something that the region has looked at for a number of decades, where if our water demands here in the community exceed what we can supply for ourselves, we may have to build a pipeline to one of the Great Lakes to bring in a new source of water, which would be a incredibly complex and expensive project, as you can imagine. So we don't want to do that, and thankfully we haven't had to, because our community continues to use water more and more efficiently, and we keep pushing that pipeline idea further and further down the road, and hopefully it'll never get there, but that is for me a motivation to keep doing what we're doing. So in terms of doing what we're doing and keeping on, this is where we're at right now with average water use in the region. So if you've got a water bill in front of you, or you know what your water bill typically is, take a look at that chart there on the right-hand side. This is typical residential water use. It's about 150 liters per person per day. You see that figure is from 2018, but it hasn't really changed since then. It's still right around there. So yes, you can kind of see how your household might compare. And we've come a long way in the last few decades. Since, say, in about 1990, Canadians were using 350 liters of water per person per day. So it's dropped significantly since then. And a lot of that is due to just improved technology. The toilets that we use and the shower heads and the washing machines, they have all been designed better now to use less water. And here in the region, we are actually using water at an even lower rate than the Ontario or the Canadian average. So we're doing really well, which might cause you to ask, well, why are we still promoting? If we're doing so well, why are we still talking about it? Well, because all those benefits I just talked about, we can continue to benefit from them the more we keep trending downwards. And there are still people, 150 liters is the average, but there's still lots of people who are using above average, of course. There's people using 200, 300 liters of water per day per person, and there's an opportunity there for them to save some money, to be more efficient, and an opportunity for our community to be the water champions of Ontario. So just before I hand it over to Andrew here, so the program that we run with the region and Reep is called the Wet Home Water Review Program. So It's called a home water review because an expert from Reep, someone like Andrew, visits a home, looks through, sort of walks through it with the homeowner to look at the appliances, to check some basic spots for leaks, talk about the residents, about their water using behaviors, and really try to help them understand where the water use is coming from in their particular home. And it's different for everybody. So it's really good to have that sort of knowledgeable advisor who can walk through it with you. And so that's something that we offer. There's an opportunity for anyone who is above average water user to use this program for free. We've done about 1,600 of these since we started the program 6 years ago. And yeah, we're still going strong. As you can see, we've also given away or installed close to 3,000 water-saving fixtures, free shower heads, replacing toilet flappers for people, things like that. So just wanted to let you know if this webinar, we hope you get lots of great tips from this webinar, but if you want to go even further and try out this program, we wanted to let you know that's available. Andrew, you ready to jump in here?
Yes, I am. Yeah, definitely. It certainly is the case that that conserving water and lowering our water bills, that is both helpful to us on our bills and what we have to pay for it, and as Scott described very well, it's super helpful for the community to manage the infrastructure that we need for the water, to make sure the resource is not overused as well. We do have a limited supply, and I think it's really a great opportunity to try to work within those limits in that bigger picture, as well as to look at our water bills and see what we can do with that. So before I'm going to get going on the top 10 list of ways to save money on your water bill, before I dive in, I want to make sure that you understand this information is for you. I've made a top 10 list based on my experience of where I'm seeing what I'm seeing might be the most important thing for you. But every household is different. You're going to have each person or each household is going to maybe find that one of these tips is really a jewel for you, or something that catches your interest, or something where you learn something that is a real takeaway. And it might be near the top of the list, or it might be closer to the bottom. It just depends. So I did my best to make this list in an order that makes sense. But just take whatever you get from it. And to be sure, we need to recognize as we work on this that we all need water, right? We want to conserve and protect the water resource, and think about that bigger picture. And we also want to bring that together with our own needs. We come to this, fully recognizing that we need water. So the point is to try to make this work for you, for you and your household. And with that, I will jump in. Tip number 10, we're counting down from 10 here, is understanding your water bills. This one is so important. So in a way, it shouldn't be the last one, but it does actually make sense that I talk about it first. Because if we're going to manage something, if we're going to figure out how to improve at something, we need information, and that information is on our water bill. Now, the water bill on this slide, this is my water bill actually. It's from the city of Waterloo, and the number you want to key in on is the consumption. There's a number 33, so if you can see my cursor there on the screen, that means 33 cubic meters of water during the billing period. 1 cubic meter of water is 1,000 liters, so that's representing 33,000 liters of water. And so that, when we look at that, of course, we look at the dollars. We want to know how much that is. We think about that in terms of, can we afford it? How to, what is this costing? Or we just want to get the bill paid and get it done. And and that's all very important. By looking at this number now, based on the information Scott described before, you can get a sense of maybe whether you're above average or below average, or in terms of how much water you use. If your usage is below average, great, that's wonderful. If your water use is above average, see it as an opportunity. You can probably find some things where you can get that use down and save yourself some money on your bill. And so there are two things about that. One is, understanding what that number means, how much it is, and where you're at. And the other thing is making sure that you compare your water bills over time. So you want to see, maybe look for patterns, or for sure you want to pick up if that bill has suddenly increased a lot. It's good to be aware of that, because maybe there's a leak, maybe something's happening that you really need to be aware of. I like the City of Waterloo bills because at the bottom right-hand corner, it has a little bar chart that shows you about a year or more worth of history of your water use. And that really helps you see those trends. And on my water bill here, I can identify, there's a bar here at April 2020. That would be the beginning of the pandemic. So my whole family all of a sudden was at home. And what do you know? We're using all our water at home. And so it stands to reason that our water bill increased at that point. And then you'll see the highest peak there on my water bill, what is October of 2020. You might remember that we had quite the drought conditions in the late summer last year. This is a little over a year ago. I actually lost a couple patches of grass and reseeded it, and then started watering it a lot. And what do you know, it showed up that we were using extra water there. Then at the very end, this one jumped up. My most recent water bill increased. I'm not totally sure what that is, but if I look up a little higher, I'll see that this actually was an estimate. So sometimes the utility will estimate your water usage instead of reading it every time. So that could be what happened here. They might have estimated a little high, maybe based on an average or something. So I don't know 100% where that's at, but it's good to be aware that those estimates can happen. Anyway, it gives you a bit of idea of how you might think about your water bills and how they might be useful to you. So that is tip number 10. Moving to the next one, tip number 9 takes us outside, and it is be careful watering gardens and lawns. Now, this is a perfect example of one that might apply to some households, but not to others, because some people are really into gardening, they really love their lawn, or they do other outdoor water uses, might be car washing or something like that. But I'm focusing on the gardens and lawns and watering there. So if you do lots of watering outside, or you do lots of gardening, this is for you. Other folks, they don't use water outside. They kind of let nature take care of the grass and so on, and they don't do as much of that. It's not going to apply as much. But it's important to be aware that watering really can add up. You'll see that it's interesting that I pointed out on my bill, I had a little peak where I had to reseed some grass. And yet right now I'm going to tell you that established lawns need very little watering. So I might seem to be contradicting myself. Well, in general, they don't need much watering. I just happen to have very sandy soil and a couple of high spots on terraces that are a little susceptible to really drying out more than your typical lawn. So you have to get to know your own property, your own lawn, your own landscaping, and know its needs. In general, and for most of my lawn, I really don't need to water all that often. A lawn can go dormant for 4 to 6 weeks without water. So you can really generally water them infrequently. If you do water, you want to water to a depth of about 1 inch. So good watering, but not going too crazy, about every week or two. And I guess if you think about, outside of lawns, if you're thinking about the plants you want to use, drought tolerant plants are good. If you can find plants that are native species to Ontario, to Southern Ontario. Those will generally do well because they've adapted to that environment. And if you're not in that native plant realm, look for ones that are drought tolerant. And that'll help a lot. They just won't need much water once they're established. And that's a key too. There's a big difference between trying to get something started and going and something that's established, right? You want to make sure you know you need to water something that's new, something that needs to get going. But then you may very well not need to water things very much. If you do water, one little tip would be use a timer if you're going to use a sprinkler, because I've heard people talk about, yeah, sometimes I just, you know, once in a while I forget the sprinkler, I forget to move it, and it's gone for quite a while, and it really is going to add up. I had someone I did a review for who doubled their water bill, and they had seeded some new grass. And I said, yeah, you know, I actually have to admit, about 10 years ago, I did the same thing. I seeded a whole bunch of new grass after a project at my place, and I doubled my water bill. It can happen. You want to be judicious and careful, just to make sure that doesn't get out of control. So that's tip number 9. Tip number 8, avoid flow-through humidifiers. Now you might be thinking, some of you will be thinking for sure, what are you talking about? What's a humidifier? And others will be like, oh yeah, I've got one. I know all about it. We needed to have one put in because the air just gets so dry in the home in the winter. So that's something that might be a need. If your house has really good air sealing and good vapor barrier, you won't be exchanging air as much with the outdoor environment. So you might not need one. But if you do need one, the common type that gets installed is called a flow-through humidifier. So it runs water through it, and it runs down a medium, like kind of a cloth-like surface that the air passes over to pick up the moisture and moisturize the air. It's mounted on the ductwork on or around the furnace. And the flow-through type, to keep that surface wet or that medium wet, it's actually flowing water across it, through it, and out a drain. And so it's always wasting some water when it's running. So if you use it a lot, it can use a lot of water. And so if you, on the other hand, if you have one like this and you don't use it very much, that you might be not using too much water. But if you use it any amount, it would be really worth considering a switch to a rotary disc humidifier. That's the picture here on the bottom. These are discs that rotate into a pool of water at the bottom and bring that water up on its surface. The air passes over it and it moisturizes the air. There is a drain spot here. That's for an optional clean out mechanism that just allows a little bit of water to come out periodically. All of these need some cleaning once in a while, but you don't need to use that feature, and it is not flowing through all the time. So it's a bath of water. What water it uses is what it goes into the air, and there's no waste. And they last a lot longer. You might be thinking, oh yeah, I've seen those. They're like a sponge with on a drum, and that's a type that exists as well. They tended to sort of foul up and gunk up much quicker. This is designed to stay cleaner longer. So that's the humidifier. Tip number 7. We're kind of in the basement of the house, talking about, you know, those systems and so on. Talking about the water softener now. Check your water softener settings. So how do you know if you might need to check your settings? One indicator is a softener typically uses about 1 bag of salt per month. And that means it regenerates about once a week. When we say it regenerates, that basically you create this salty water that you flush out the main tank of the softener. You use that salt water to flush the main tank periodically so that it renews it and it can continue to soften the water. So it should do that about once a week. Maybe even longer intervals, and it should use a bag of salt per month or less, ideally. So if you're using a lot more salt, or you know it's regenerating a lot more frequently, then you might want to look at your settings. So and the other way around, you could end up having it regenerate too infrequently, and then the water will go hard in between. But for water conservation, you want to make sure it's not going too often. So that's that's important, just to have that set up right. And things could change. I found out the settings on my softener were off because it was set up before we had kids, and now our household has grown and we use more water. And now I'm having to sort of, I'm in the process of trying to get the settings right in order to make it work properly. So another thing along with this that you can consider is the idea of softening only the hot water. If you think, yes, I want to soften the water, we do have hard water here in Waterloo Region. That's why we have water softeners. Folks who live in Toronto or other places that have water from the Great Lakes, they have much less need to soften water. But here in the Waterloo Region, that's part of the groundwater scene here. It comes out of the ground with a lot of minerals, calcium and magnesium. So we want to soften, but if you're thinking, I do want to soften, but I don't want to have to buy and use all that salt. I'm concerned about all that salt going down the drain, and it does end up in the Grand River ultimately because we can't fully treat for it. So if you want to reduce your salt usage and some water usage along with it, consider softening only the hot water. So why only the hot water? When you heat water, the hardness comes out onto your fixtures, in your hot water kettle. The element in there gets caked in that hardness. The heat really causes it to come out. The cold, it doesn't happen so much. So if you're going to soften anything, soften the hot water. If you leave the cold water hard, you won't have nearly as much problems with mineral buildup in the plumbing and on the fixtures and so on as you would if you soften nothing, right? And there are people who don't soften at all, and they're just kind of accustomed to cleaning with vinegar and so on to keep things clean, and they're fine with that, right? That's the other approach. This is kind of a middle ground. So, and there's a rebate from the region, a $50 rebate. If you get it done, submit an invoice, you can get the rebate. There are some key steps you have to go through to do that. So you have to look into that, specifically how to do it. You do need to make sure you assess things properly ahead of time, which can be done as part of an in-home water review, the type that I do as part of that program. I can verify that you currently are softening both hot and cold. So there's that strategy, and there is a website also that you can check out to learn more about water softeners, www.watersoftenerfacts.ca. So that's number 7. Moving on now. Talking about laundry here now. So still on appliances, but into ones that we actually use and interact with more now. It's important to use an efficient clothes washer, especially if you do a lot of laundry. So if you're a household of 1 or 2 people and you don't do too much laundry, it may be less important to make a switch. But for larger households or people who, for whatever reason, do a lot of laundry, it can be really helpful to have an efficient washing machine. The front load washers are the most efficient, for sure. There are also top load washers that are labeled high efficiency, the little HE symbol. They're also efficient, a bit less efficient than the front load washers. I also added in a picture there of a little washboard that I think if we had to use those, we would probably very successfully use a lot less water to do laundry. We'd probably not do as much laundry, but I think most of us have been very grateful to have the automatic machines. And so for most people, it's considering a high efficiency machine that we're looking at. Other strategies, if you say, well, I just got something, it's pretty new, I don't want to replace it, or we're only a few people, we don't do that much laundry. So, or even if you have a front load machine, make sure you're, combining loads as much as possible, gathering up that load of lights or darks or whatever to make sure you're getting the best use out of each load, the water for each load. Or, just evaluate your assumptions. Maybe there are some things that need a little less washing than you thought. Maybe you're accustomed to washing certain things, shower curtains, whatever, more often, but maybe your household's smaller now, or something is different. Maybe certain things don't need washing as much. So some other tips to go along with it. That was tip number 6. Moving on. Again, with appliances, number 5 is use the dishwasher if you have one. Many of us don't realize this, and I actually, before I started doing this work, I was uncertain, but the dishwasher is the best way to wash dishes in order to use the least amount of water. The modern dishwashers are very efficient. It's very worthwhile to use it as much as you can. Now, of course, we don't put everything in the dishwasher. Some things don't fit. Some things are not dishwasher safe. And you know, that's fine. You only do what you can, right? You do what works for you. But the main thing is, if you have that dishwasher, definitely make use of it. It will save you water. If you don't have a dishwasher, then what? Well, the main thing is, do put soapy water in the sink. That is going to typically be more efficient than running the water and washing a dish at a time or something like that, with the tap running a lot. Running the tap will use more water. So if you maybe make the sink half full of soapy water in order to wash, if you're doing a lot of dishes, and you have a double sink, put some rinse water in the second sink as well. The less you run the tap, the better. If for some reason, it's just the way you get it done, or you have one really big sink and it just seems like the way to do it is to run the tap a little bit, you could get a low flow aerator, or if need be, even if you have to replace the entire fixture, the entire faucet fixture, if you keep the flow down, that's going to help a lot as well. So that's tip number 5. Number 4, we are moving into the bathroom here for tip number 4. Replace older, inefficient toilets. Now, Scott mentioned that that the region did kind of have a program to help people get rid of older 13-liter flush toilets, in the past, and lots of gains were made with that. It doesn't mean that they're all gone. We do see 13-liter flush toilets on occasion, for sure. And those are worth replacing. That'll pay for itself for sure if you replace a 13-liter flush toilet with either a standard 6-liter, or I would say definitely consider a high efficiency toilet, which uses about 4.8 liters per flush. And dual flush toilets are also good options. We kind of consider that to achieve about the same result. But you might in some cases be a little better with dual flush, but anything high efficiency is great. So the toilet in the picture there, that's probably even more than 13 liters. Pre-1980 and older toilets, they used a lot of water for each flush. And it's definitely worth replacing those, unless it's one that gets very little use and it's not leaking or anything. Okay, maybe not, but otherwise, get it done when you can. One question that might come up in your mind is, well, okay, if it uses less water, is it going to flush as well? Is it going to work as well? In fact, in my experience, they put more design effort into newer efficient toilets. They actually flush as good or better than the older ones that use more water. They can be very good, and most of them, they're not too loud either. Maybe not quite as quiet as some of the older ones, but they're pretty good. Only a few of them have the kind of compressed sort of an extra velocity to the flush or something like that. That's actually quite rare. So noise is not too much of an issue either, and flush performance is good. So that's toilets. Tip number 3, staying in the bathroom here, we're talking about using efficient shower heads. This is important because in my experience doing home water reviews, shower heads or showers is the biggest water use typically. Out of all the different categories of water use that we look at, from in the kitchen to toilets to for most people, outdoor water use and so on, all those things, showers typically come up as the highest water use for us. So using an efficient shower head is very important then. So what is efficient? And it's important to understand that it is the shower head that determines how much water comes out. It's not as much the pressure and so on. They really are designed to flow at a certain rate. So efficient is considered in the range of 5.7 to 7.6 liters per minute. Okay, now you might be wondering, okay, why 5.7 and why 7.6? Why is it such a strange specific number? They're actually designed to the U.S. gallon because, of course, the U.S. market is larger, and so the design is based on the fact that they use U.S. gallons. So 5.7 is actually 1.5 U.S. gallons per minute. 7.6 is 2 gallons per minute. And inefficient that we commonly see would be 9.5 or 11.4 liters per minute. That would be 2.5 or 3 gallons per minute. So it can make a big difference when you consider, shifting that amount of water per minute downward. It can make a really big difference. I actually remember, 11.4 is inefficient. There are some that use even more water. And I remember finding when doing a home water review, I found my first 5 gallon per minute shower head. That'd be 19 liters per minute. And I almost dropped the flow measuring bag because it was filling up to almost the top. And I was amazed at how much water that could come out in such a short time. And I'm only measuring it for 5 seconds. And so I offered, as part of the home water review program, when we find anything above 7.6 liters per minute, we offer a free shower head, either for them to install themselves or we install it for free as well, if that's what they would like. And this household, the people were so grateful to get that shower head because that shower was being used. They were trying to figure out why their water use was so high. And they were just so happy to get that replacement shower head that they knew would use so much less water, like less than half the flow. So that was, I was so happy to be able to do that for them. And I give away and install a lot of shower heads. A lot of them I find at 9.5, 11.5 liters per minute. We replace a lot of those too. And another important point, is that you want to find one you like, right? Of course, if you have a nice 5.7 liter per minute shower head, but it doesn't work for you, it does, whatever, it doesn't get the shampoo out of your hair, whatever it is, that's not so great. But the good news is there are actually quite a variety of shower heads available. And you can look for the WaterSense label. That labeling started with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, but it has been adopted in Canada as well. So we can look at that here. In this fancy shower head in this picture, I think that's 1 3/4 gallons per minute. So 6.5 liters per minute, and it's got like 6 different settings. It's very fancy. So just because something looks something that you really might like, doesn't mean that it's going to use a lot of water. There are efficient ones with lots of options too. And the other picture here, that's the one that we give away free in either standard or handheld. And it looks much simpler, of course. It's my understanding people really do like it quite well usually. So, but find one you like for sure. So what's tip number 2? We're at 3. There are 2 more here. Moving on to tip number 2. Well, guess what? We're still talking about showers, of all things, because, as I said, it is the thing that comes up as the biggest water use most typically. So tip number 2 is take shorter showers. What's a short shower, right? It's kind of relative. It's very personal as well. From doing a lot of water reviews, I would say showering for 15 minutes or more, that's a long shower, and it does use a lot of water. 8 or 10 minute showers are pretty common, and the ideal is 5 minutes or less. And for some of us, well, that seems maybe unrealistic. I talked to a lot of people who say, but I have long hair, it takes that long just to get the shampoo out of my hair or something. And of course, you have to do what works for you. At the same time, I've met people who have really impressed me by saying, oh yeah, I really don't use very much water. I put water in a bucket and I bathe with that. And then I just turn the shower head on for about a minute to rinse off and I'm done. So I'd say that's like a 2 or 3 minute shower between the bucket and that rinse. So I've been really amazed at what's possible. But of course, we're all different. We all have different needs, different preferences. So, you know, do what works for you and do your best. That's all we can do, right? Other approaches, strategies to save water in showers, consider turning the water off part of the time. You know, that might not work if you just say, I'm going to get too cold or something, or I'm not going to remember to do that. For some folks that might work just fine. Another option is take fewer showers. You know, it really depends. It depends on what your occupation and lots of other factors. You know, but those are some ideas. Do what works for you. Tip number 1 is detect and repair leaks. So I don't know if you saw that coming or not, and you might be wondering, okay, why is that there? And I think I put it there because when people have the big problems where they've gotten a really big water bill, that's just that can be very difficult. It can be it can be hard to afford, or even just disappointing, right? So I think you know, this goes back to the water bill where you're watching for trends over time. If you see a gradual or sudden increase, you may very well have a leak. You can't explain it based on your water use. It's probably a leak. And when we talk about a leak, we're talking about water that's going down the drain, for one thing. If the water if it was a leaky pipe, it would be coming out of the walls or the ceiling or going all over the floors, and you would see it. It wouldn't. You'd see that before it got really big on your water bill. But when it gets big, it could be hundreds of dollars, even thousands of dollars a year that it can be leaking at such a high rate. And the most common leak that I find is a toilet. This is a leak. I did a little internet search. I was going to see if I could find some kind of a picture of a leaking toilet. And I saw all kinds of pictures of toilets with puddles of water on the floor beside them. And that's not what we're talking about here. That's a type of leak that is a concern, of course, and needs to be fixed, but that's just a leak in the drain. What we're talking about is when the tank has some kind of a leak that is sending water through the bowl and on down the drain, often undetected. So it's a good idea to check for leaks at least twice a year. So what you can do, and what I do in every toilet and every home water review, is put some dye in the tank. So I have a little color tablet, or you can use food coloring. Typically the tablets I use turn the water blue, and then you just leave the toilet sit for about 20 minutes, and then you look in the bowl. If there's any blue in the bowl, you have a leak. So what's causing that? Usually it's the flapper. So the device at the bottom of the toilet, you look at the picture on the slide that is lifted up by the chain attached to the handle, allowing the water to flush through the bowl, and then it closes again and the tank fills up and stops. If that flapper is no longer sealing properly, water is leaking through it and down the drain. The other type of leak I commonly see is that the fill valve doesn't shut off. So the seals in the fill valve could wear, and it allows the water level to continue to rise as the water flows in, and then it goes down the overflow tube, through the bowl, and down the drain. Same effect. Now, when the flapper is leaking, the water level goes down, and you typically hear that intermittent fill up, that on off. If the fill valve is leaking, it's kind of a slower, typically a slower, not as harder to hear, continuous running. Now, I remember I did a water review for some folks who had a leaking toilet in the bathroom, in the ensuite bathroom adjacent to where people slept. And it might seem hard to believe that that would go unnoticed. Now, when I walk into any bathroom, my ears are wide open to see if I can hear anything happening right off the bat. I thought maybe I heard something. And as soon as I lifted the lid off the toilet tank, it was obvious. Oh yeah, this is leaking. I heard it, I saw it. And I measured that, and it was leaking at a rate of at least $1,000 a year. So that was, they were very glad to know that that was the case. In that case, it was also a bit of an inefficient toilet. So the solution was to replace that toilet. But replacing the toilet is typically not necessary. It's simply replacing the flapper or having a plumber service the fill valve. And if we can, if a flapper is leaking as part of a home water review, we will typically replace that on the spot if we can. That's something that you know, we really like to get that done if we can, just stop that leak right away. Yeah, so toilets are the usual problem. What else can leak and send water down the drain? Water softeners. If they have valves that open and close and that does that regeneration process, if it doesn't shut down properly, it might be continually sending water down the drain. Like normally, it's just got a drain line that is getting rid of that salty water after it's flushed through to regenerate the main tank. But if it doesn't shut off, it can leak. Those flow-through humidifiers, they will use water when they're operating. They also have an on-off valve, right? So when they're operating, if they shut off, it's supposed to stop flowing through. But if it doesn't shut off, right, now it becomes a leak as well. And the last thing, reverse osmosis filters. That's what some people have for their drinking water if they really want to do a thorough treatment for water quality. They use a bit of water as part of their normal treatment process. If the filters get old and they aren't serviced regularly, they'll use more water. And then you can even have problems where the automatic shutoff valve doesn't shut off properly, and then they can leak continually as well. So there you have it. That is the top 10 list, the top 10 tips to save money on your water bill. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share a bit of what I know.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Hopefully everybody got something from that they can try out at home. Got a tip somewhere they could check in their own house for a leak, or maybe something that could be upgraded, or a behavior that can be changed. Yeah, what I really get from listening to Andrew is how water conservation is a mix of our behaviors and the technology we have in our house, and just sort of maintaining and checking for leaks and maintaining what we have. So we've got a few minutes here for questions, which is great. So we've had some good ones come in. Andrew, you and I can go through these, and we can both try to answer them as best we can. Can you? I'm assuming you can bring up the Q&A so you can see them yourself. But I can. I guess
I'd advance the slide. I don't know if maybe I should hang on.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. Before we jump to the questions, thanks for reminding me.
Yep.
I've talked about this wet home program a little bit already, but I wanted to let you know that if you do want to sign up, there's the email or the website there, regionofwaterloo.ca/conservation. You can also directly call Reep Green Solutions at the phone number there to book an audit or a home review. And it's you do have to be a Region of Waterloo resident, of course. Your water use needs to be above average, at least for a small period of time. So, but if you talk to Reep, they can give you more information. And then, yeah, so I did also promise to tell people about winning a rain barrel. So the way to do that is we have a feedback survey for the webinar. It should pop up for you automatically as soon as you close the Zoom window. And I will also be emailing that link out to you tomorrow. You just need to fill out that survey, tell us what you thought about the webinar, and there's a few questions about your interest in water efficiency. And then we will be picking 2 people randomly from those who submit the survey to win a rain barrel. Now, you do have to live in the region of Waterloo to win one. I wish we could deliver it to wherever someone else may be joining us with this being digital. I'm guessing most people are from the region, but we could have some people from outside the community too. So you do have to be a region resident, and there will be a skill testing question to sort of make sure it's all done properly. So anyway, if that interests you, please do fill out the survey, and it'll be everyone who fills out the survey within 48 hours will be entered into the draw, 48 hours from tonight. All right, well, let's move on to the questions. So we had a couple people asked about aquifers. They're wondering how aquifers refill. So that those recharge through rainwater and snowmelt, and the water percolates down through the ground. The speed of the water depends on the material that is moving through. Clay is much less permeable than large pieces of rock or gravel. So, but typically it moves at a speed of like a couple meters per year through the ground. So it's a fairly slow process. And someone asked about the capacity of our aquifers. I can't. Sorry, I don't have like a cubic meter number for you on that, but maybe I could look into it. Someone asked, how does Canada compare to other developed countries like Europe for our water use? We are very high. We use roughly double the amount of water per person that a lot of European countries use. It varies. I mean, every country in Europe is a little different. And sometimes per capita water use folds in like agricultural water use and different. It's not always comparing apples to apples, but in any chart you look at, Canada is right near the top, usually in the top 3 in the world per person. And even places like Australia and New Zealand use less water per person than we do. Someone asked about pricing on the water bills and whether it's different across different municipalities. And yes, it is. Every city and township in the region does have a slightly different water rate. It's so the region of Waterloo handles all the water treatment, the water supply, and getting the clean, treating that water and getting it ready for you. But then it's the cities and the townships who distribute it, and they're the ones who bill you. And so based on their infrastructure needs, their staffing, their pricing on the water is just slightly different, but it's all fairly close, but it's not all identical across the region. How is the consumption on the water bill collected? So there's a water meter in everybody's home. So if you go down to your basement, you probably know where that is, because there's usually a shut-off valve that you can turn if you want to turn off all the water to your home. So you can look on that water meter and see your consumption change day over day or week after week. That's a way that you can even try to catch leaks if you want to look at that meter in the middle of the night when no one's using any water. And if you find it still turning, if there's some water use after an hour, you probably have a leak. But the way that the cities get that information, they don't go in your basement, obviously, and check your water meter. They have so in Kitchener, where I live, there's a little black sensor on the outside of the house, and someone comes by with an electronic meter reader and can get the data from that sensor. A lot of municipalities like the City of Waterloo and Cambridge and Woolwich, I believe, are changing to smart water meters where the signal just is sent via Wi-Fi, sent wirelessly, I should say. And the data is just beamed right to the municipality, and no one has to go to your house. So there's sort of a process right now of a lot of areas are switching over to that.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in and mention, when you look at your water meter, So when I come do a home water review, I'm looking at the meter inside the house. I don't have a reader for outside, so I'll be looking for your water meter, and if I can't find it, I'll ask the homeowner, okay, where is it? And when you look at the numbers, all the numbers before the decimal point, that's the cubic meters that is comparable to what's on your bill. The numbers after gets to finer resolution. So the first 3 digits after the decimal place is the number of liters within that each cubic meter. So that just so you know what you're looking at and comparing to your bill.
Great. Yeah. So someone mentioned the tip of putting a brick into your toilet tank to reduce the water capacity. Now, I know people used to do that. I don't think it's recommended anymore, because I believe that say like a brick can break down over time, and you can get chunks of it into your plumbing, which I don't think is something you want to have happen. And I would say, especially if you have a newer modern toilet, like they're fairly highly engineered and designed to work with the specific amount of water that's in the tank. And so, I wouldn't want to mess with that myself. I think it's made to work with that amount of water. So I'd stick with that, especially for a new toilet.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How can I know if my current shower head is efficient or inefficient? Well, you could have Andrew come.
I'll jump in. I would say measure it. So I have the benefit of a properly designed flow measuring bag where I count to 5, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, and so on. So if you can use any kind of sturdy bag, and I would say don't go beyond 10 seconds, right? And then multiply whatever you get by 6. So fill the bag and have something, maybe you've got a juice pitcher or something that's got gradations, or a big, or even a 2-cup measuring cup. If you went, you can figure out some way to measure that amount, probably just capturing 5 or 10 seconds worth of flow with a bag, and then measuring it, multiply either by 12 or 6. And then you'll know the amount of water per minute.
Yep, definitely something you can measure on your own.
Yeah.
Someone asked about are dual flush or piston valves more efficient than flap valves for toilets, or are they less likely to leak? I don't know a whole lot about that, Andrew. I don't know. Do you have any?
I don't know for sure. I think the flapper ones are more the kind of the traditional way of doing it, maybe a little less costly. The toilet is designed either way. The toilet's designed for a certain amount, a certain flush rate, and I think you can count on it being fairly close to that. In terms of more or less prone to leak, I don't think I have enough information to say one way or the other for sure. Flappers are easy to replace, by the homeowner. I would say it's you can see everything that you're doing, so there's value in the simplicity. The other type, it's possible they have a little bit more precision control to the amount of water that goes through, or they have a little more design ability in them, maybe. But I don't know for sure. They can leak as well. There is a seal. It's more like a ring washer type shape thing. That it's the same idea. The materials can break down over time. They can leak as well. They're not the final solution necessarily, but I think either work fine.
Yeah, I don't have any data on that myself either. And toilet flappers are a very common source of leak, but they're, like Andrew said, they're very easily changed out as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So someone offered the insight that they started taking cold showers this year, and really helped them cut back on their shower times. Yeah, I think that would do it for me too.
Very nice. Yeah.
I have my fan in the bathroom's on a timer, so I kind of use that to keep my showers in check. Whatever works for you.
Yeah.
So Jeannie asked about she wastes a lot of water waiting for the hot water to come through the taps, especially in the bathroom, and was wondering how to manage this.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
When people have a really particular problem with this, where it just takes forever, you do sometimes get kind of a booster water heater, like a small tank that can be kind of put somewhere in or close to the bathroom. you know, like if the bathroom, let's say it's on the main floor and then there's a spot in the basement right underneath it where you can put a small electric one. It will use a little bit of extra energy because you'll have that heat loss from that standby loss from that little tank, but it's a little tank, so it's not too bad, right? And it'd have an electric heater on it, so it can kind of be located anywhere as long as like you get an electrician to run the circuit to it. So that's a way that people can deal with that. And then that little tank will run out, but by the time it's run out, now the hot water from the main water heater has arrived there. So then if set up right, it should be fairly seamless. And then you can get the shower started sooner and use, you know, it can work better. Yeah, I recently switched over to an electric water heater, so I no longer have to have the water heater located by the chimney, which I had the type of gas water heater that was right by the chimney. Now I had the flexibility. I moved it a little bit closer to where the water actually gets used. I wasn't, you know, I didn't make a big difference, but that's another strategy. That's a bigger job though, for sure. That's a couple ideas that come to my mind.
Yeah, I know some people who have to wait a long time for hot water, and they just tend to have big jars that they fill up with the water while they're they're running it to get it hot, and then they will use that to water plants or something.
Yep.
So I mean, it takes some efforts, but if you're really keen to save that water, that would be an option.
Yeah, and that is a lower cost, like not requiring a big project like the ideas I mentioned.
Yeah. Do you know how much water a typical front loader? I'm assuming this is a front loading washing machine. Do you know how much that uses per load, Andrew?
Our data form for the home water reviews assumes 70 liters. Yeah.
Okay.
Compared to 100 liters for a high efficiency top loader or 140 liters for a standard top loader. Yeah, so they should, from a regular top load washing machine to a front load, it should cut the water use in half. Yeah.
Okay. So I know we're kind of getting over time here. I can see a lot of people have stuck around with us, so great. I'm glad this is still providing some value for you. I don't think we're gonna get through all these questions, unfortunately. What is the typical cost to change your plumbing to bypass the softener? Yeah, so that would be if you're switching to softening hot water only, so that your softener is basically just running to your water heater and the rest of your water for the house is bypassing it. We are seeing pricing in like $300 to $400 range is what we're seeing, and so the region offers a $50 rebate off of that. Some people, if you have the skills, some people can do it themselves. Not something I would personally do, but yeah, if you want to, that's a way to make it more affordable. And some people also get it done like if they're buying a new water softener anyway, and then since that's being installed, it's the perfect time to replumb. Yes, those are
so sometimes I tell people that you make a list for a plumber, right? If you've got that, you know, that, I don't know, like that faucet you were thinking about replacing and this other thing. And, you know, because you'll get they have to charge for the service call. It takes some of their time to get to your house even, right? So they can possibly realize some efficiency for you, at least a little bit, if you get a few things for them to do while they're there. We can't guarantee that, but I think that's a reasonable strategy to help a bit.
Okay. And bouncing off that, somebody asked, how can they get a kit to test their water hardness? So actually at this website that you see on the screen here, regionofwaterloo.ca/conservation, there's a water softener section there, and there's an application form you can fill out, and we will send you a little water hardness test kit. You can also get sort of a ballpark figure from that website, watersoftenerfacts.ca. You can look up your neighborhood and see what the water hardness is for that neighborhood, because it does vary depending where you are in the region. But yeah, go to the region's conserving water webpage there, and we can send you a hardness test kit to test at home. Let's see. So are our aquifers depleting or are we maintaining their levels? In general, I would say we are maintaining their levels. It's something to give you a more detailed answer. I would want to go talk to our hydrogeologists at the region, because that's not me. But I don't want to scare anybody when I'm talking about the aquifers being used. Like, we're not using them up, and our community's not going to run out of water. That's not something that's not a situation we're in right now. The region does monitor the groundwater levels to make sure we're not taking too much. So yeah, we are making sure we're keeping them at a healthy level. Let's see. Oh, are baths better than showers for water consumption? No, showers are definitely more efficient. Anything to add, Andrew?
No, obviously it depends on your shower head and how long your shower is, but in general, a bath will use more water. I mean, a bath with the water not very deep in the tub compared to a long shower, okay, maybe that might be better, but normally showers are more efficient.
Yeah, okay. Do we recommend touchless fixtures for bathroom sinks? I don't really have a recommendation either way on that. I don't see those very often in people's homes. Have you seen those when you're in?
No, I don't see them. I think that would be, if you identify that would be helpful for you, maybe consider it. But you know, I think most people, I think it's became sort of common wisdom, you know, that there's, you know, turn the water off when you're brushing your teeth, things like that. I think most people can manage that. If you have specific needs to help with that, then it might be something to consider. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone asked about aerators. How are they useful, and how do you install them? Could you explain sort of what an aerator is, Andrew?
Yeah. So an aerator, for one thing, it is the thing on a faucet that controls the flow rate. So you can install a more efficient aerator so that you're managing how much water is coming out. So that would be useful anytime you're using running water. An aerator that controls the flow will help you use less water. You don't want that if you're trying to fill something that just makes it take longer. And the other thing is, the aerator, it allows the water to come out more forcefully without using a lot of water, right? The way it comes out, it really is kind of aerated water, so you get more force, but without adding water. But they do, just like shower heads, they're designed to a specific flow rate. So if we find something that's more than 7.6 liters per minute in a bathroom sink, if our standard replacements fit, we can put one in, right? And it's just threaded. Typically, it's just threaded. You have to unscrew it. Either you might do it by hand. Often it takes a wrench that can get a hold of it, or if there are flat spots, you can use pliers to get a hold of it, or a flat spotted one, you can get a wrench on there and turn it off. You just want to be careful that you're not forcing it too much. But so a lot of kitchen faucets nowadays are really kind of have a fancier design to them, and in that case, you might not be able to change the actual aerator. But yeah, that's the basics.
Yeah. Okay. Someone was wondering about looking for info on the summer conservation bylaw. So there's information on the region's website there, but essentially rules that we've had in place since I believe 2005 in the region are everyone gets 1 day a week to water their grass. It's based on your house number. And then for watering gardens or washing your car, other sort of non-grass water use, it's every second day, again, based on your house number. And so then the reason we do that is just to limit the peaks of water demand during the summer, because those spikes where if there's a dry week and everyone picks Saturday to water their grass, and we get this big spike, that's more water than we can supply all at one time. So we're trying to spread it out and limit, limit how much water people are using, and so they're not overdoing it, but also managing that peak so we don't get a huge spike all at once. All right. Maybe we'll just end with this one, Andrew, because I don't want to keep you too long here. Someone mentioned their toilet has 2 flappers, and they were curious about that. Have you ever? I've never heard of a toilet with 2 flappers. Is that something you're familiar with?
No, not exactly. Unless it's, it may be a certain type of dual flush toilet that is designed around a flapper design. Often dual flush have that vertical flush valve with the buttons on top. That's the typical dual flush. Maybe it's an earlier dual flush. That's one thought. And just to be sure, like the flapper is kind of it's usually right in the middle, kind of a flexible thing lifted by a chain. You know, if you're visualizing something a little bit different, like two kind of vertical pipe things, one is the fill valve and one would be the flush valve of the type with the button on top. Like perhaps that's what you're visualizing there. If I've missed it, sorry. Generally, I'm not seeing something with 2 actual flappers though. Yeah, best I can do there.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew, is there one more slide you can advance? I think the next one has our email addresses on it. Great.
Yes, indeed, for sure.
So if you have any more questions, if we didn't get to yours, or if something came to mind, just you send me an email, or you can send Andrew an email, and we can try to help you out. But that's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks everybody for coming. We really appreciate your interest in the topic, and also appreciate you filling out the feedback form if you get a chance. So with that, we'll sign off. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks everyone for joining us.